Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today I'm going to be giving my prediction on both of the playoff games coming up today. But before I get to that, let me first say I've got a shout out coming up at the end of the video. So please stay tuned for that. And then I want to say that I hope everybody enjoyed the Music City Bowl from yesterday afternoon. That is what bowl games are all about. You talk about exciting. That was an exciting bowl game. Purdue ended up winning in overtime by the score of 48-45, but man, what an exciting football game that was, especially in the fourth quarter. And then I wanted to say this. I was going to say it yesterday when I was talking about the Cheez-It Bowl, and I figured, hey, I'll wait till tomorrow so I can have something else about Clemson in tomorrow's video. That win on Wednesday night in the Cheez-It Bowl gave Dabo his 150th career win, and they're saying he's won 150 games in 15 years, but he's actually won 150 games in less than 15 years because he's only been the head coach full-time since 2009, because we know he took over on an interim basis in 2008, so it's not quite been 15 full seasons as of yet, and he has the second highest winning percentage among active coaches who have coached for at least 5 years. His winning percentage is 80.5%, and the only coach that's higher than that is Kirby Smart, who is at 81%. And I believe the reason why they're saying at least 5 years is because Ryan Day probably has a winning percentage higher than that, I would guess, but he has not quite been around for 5 years. But on to the playoff games today. I know back earlier this week on Monday, I talked about some of the things you should look for from both teams, and that was just to kind of give you a preview of maybe what you should expect in both of these games. But honestly, if you look at past history, it shows that more than likely one of the underdogs is going to win. And if you look at past history, it also shows that more than likely one of these games is going to be a blowout. And honestly, I don't have a dog in the fight. So honestly, I would like to see Cincinnati win, and I would like to see Michigan win, just because nobody expects that. Who in the world, in their right mind, back in September when football started, would have said the national championship game was going to be Cincinnati and Michigan? And it's always good to see, somebody different in the playoffs and somebody different in the national championship game. But even though I would like to see Cincinnati win and I would like to see Michigan win, I just don't see it happening. There is a path for both teams to win. Like I said on Monday, if Cincinnati can run the ball with any kind of effectiveness at all and keep Alabama's offense on the sideline for as long as they possibly can, there's a path for them to stay in the game. Because a few weeks back when I was talking about Alabama and Michigan State when they played in the playoffs a few years back, Bama won the game by the score of 38-0. But if I remember correctly, it was 10-0 at halftime. So Michigan State stayed in the game, but Michigan State just could not move the football at all. They looked awful on offense. So by the middle of the third quarter, their defense was gassed because they were on the field the entire time because they couldn't move the football. This Cincinnati defense is as good as that Michigan State defense was, but this Cincinnati offense is better than that Michigan State offense was overall as far as the skill players and all that. But I just don't know if the Cincinnati offensive line is going to be able to block Alabama at all. And if it's not, it doesn't matter how good the skill players are. They're not going to move the football. But I do think since Alabama has struggled all year long running the football, I don't think they're just going to line up and run the football against Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's secondary is, as I've said all season long, it's tremendous. More than likely, probably at least two of their guys in the secondary are going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. They're phenomenal athletes. But if Bama goes back and throws the ball 45, 50 times, there will be a few times, no matter how good they are, that they're going to get beat. They're going to get burnt. So I say Alabama wins this game, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And I hope it's not a blowout. Who wants to sit back and watch a playoff game be a blowout? So I think Bama wins, but Chris, my man Chris, gave me his prediction, I think, on Tuesday when he chimed in, and I believe he said 34-13 Alabama, I think was his prediction. Off the top of my head, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I say Bama wins, but I'll say it's going to be probably, 31-17, 31-21, 34-21, somewhere along in there. I believe last I heard Bama was a 14-point favorite. It'll be something like that. They'll win somewhere between 10 and 17 points. If they win by more than 17, I'll be surprised. And then the Georgia and Michigan game, it's pretty much two teams that schematically, even though it might look different, it's both teams that schematically are the same kind of offense. They're just going to try to line up and run the ball as much as they possibly can, and you're going to see very few passes in this game unless one team gets far behind, which I don't expect. I don't expect much offense in this game, and I don't think either team is going to be able to consistently run the ball like they want to because both teams' defenses are so good. But I think Georgia just has a few more players where it matters, where it counts. And a friend of mine from work just last night was talking about how he doesn't understand how Georgia has all the talent at the running back position like they've always had, but for whatever reason now they just can't run the ball effectively. But if you look at the overall stats, Georgia runs the ball with just as much effectiveness now as they did when they had Chubb and Gurley and all those guys. The only difference is, for whatever reason, even though Cook and White are just as fast as the other guys, they just don't have that breakaway speed. When they had Gurley, there was always one or two times a game where you expected Todd Gurley to get the ball and run for 60 yards. Now, Cook and White don't do that. They have the speed, but they just can't break tackles like those guys could. Those guys could break a tackle and run for 60 yards. Now with the guys Georgia has now, they'll run 5 or 6 yards, they get hit, they go down. So statistically, they still run the ball just as effectively. They just don't have that breakaway speed where they're going to give you 1 or 2 touchdowns a game just by breaking one for 60 yards. It just does not happen. They're just going to run for 5 or 6 yards a chunk the entire game. That's what they do. But I think Georgia has better skill players, and I expect Georgia to win this game. I'll say something like 24-20, 24-21, 27-21, somewhere between 3 and 8 points. If they win by more than 10, I'll be surprised. But if Georgia doesn't win, I'll be surprised. And I would like to see one of the underdogs win, not just because it'd be a good story if at least one of the underdogs could win, but who wants to see Alabama and Georgia in the national championship game again? You know, nobody likes seeing the same thing all the time. People complain about, Clemson and Alabama have played for the national championship 3 times. Clemson won 2, and then Bama won 1, and then they played in the first round of the playoffs 1 time, and Bama won. So they've played 4 times in the playoffs altogether, but 3 times for the national championship. So if Georgia and Bama both win and they play, it'll only be the second time they've played for the national championship, but they also play each other in the conference championship. So I know if people get tired of seeing Clemson and Bama play for the national title, they're going to get tired of seeing Bama and Georgia play for the national title. But Would you rather them play for the national title, or would you rather them play in the first round of the playoffs? Because the only way to fix it would have been to have Bama and Georgia play in the first round of the playoffs, and then have Cincinnati and Michigan play, and then the winner of Bama and Georgia would play the winner of Cincinnati and Michigan. But they didn't want to do that because they just played to round out the regular season. You don't want to round out the regular season with two teams and then turn around and kick off the playoffs with the same two teams. So that's why they tried to avoid it, and they're hoping that one of the underdogs wins. And I would like to see it. I just don't. Even though I'd like to see it, I'd love to see it, and I want to see it, as a realist, I just don't see it. I think Bama is better than Cincinnati, and I think Georgia is better than Michigan. Cincinnati has the skilled players on offense, and I'm a huge fan of their quarterback, Desmond Ridder. I just don't think their offensive line is going to be able to block Alabama. I just don't see it. So unless they get a cheap touchdown on special teams or a cheap touchdown on defense, I think by mid-third quarter, their defense is going to be gassed because their offense is just not going to be able to move the ball. So I think Bama wins, like I said, but I just don't think it'll be a blowout. And I expect Georgia to win as well. Any thoughts on either of the games, please feel free to let me know. And if you agree with me that you think Bama will win and you think Georgia will win, go ahead and give me your thoughts on what you think will be the score in the national championship game coming up on Monday night, January the 10th, because as we know, these two teams played back early this month, and we know Bama won, and Bama won convincingly. So let's hope that if Bama and Georgia both win and they play again for the national title, it won't be a 17-point game. We need a closer game than that. So any thoughts on any of those, please feel free to let me know. My shout out today goes out to my man Tommy, who lives in Tennessee, which anybody that follows the channel knows I'm a huge fan of the state of Tennessee. The whole state is God's country. He is a racing fan and a wrestling fan. So I told him he's come to the right place because I try my best to talk NASCAR during the season every single week. If there's nothing else going on, I'll do a review of just the NASCAR race. If there's something else going on, I'll do the NASCAR race and whatever else there is to talk about. But I try my best to talk NASCAR on a weekly basis during the channel. And everybody that follows the channel knows that we talk wrestling pretty regularly here on the channel. And speaking of wrestling, tomorrow night is the WWE pay-per-view called Day One. I have not had a chance to talk about it this week because of everything going on in the world of college football this time of the year. But you can easily get on the internet and look at the match card, and we will review it coming up here on the channel one day next week. Any early thoughts on that, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. How do you organize a space party? You plan it. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.